Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today we got some brand new news about the Andor TV show. Now this is a show that for a long time we actually had almost no news about, and some people were even beginning to question if it was even going to be a thing anymore. But of course, during that big, Disney Star Wars reveal of all these different shows, it was of course confirmed that it still is a thing, it's still going to happen. And we have some actual news about it now. Okay, so basically, as you can see right here, Star Wars reverses decision on Alan Tudyk's K2SO in Andor Disney Plus show. So, way back, okay, in 2019's D23, when I don't know if that was actually when they first announced it, or if that was just when they first got on stage and talked about it. But in any case, Alan Tudyk was on stage, and he was supposed to be part of the show. It was gonna be like part of their first meeting between Cassian Andor and K2SO, and that was gonna be just part of what was gonna happen in the show. Now at the time, one of the, it's a really small concern, but one of the small things was like, oh, they did a comic book depicting that meeting already. So some people were kind of wondering, like, what's gonna happen there? Are they gonna go with just repeat the comic book in one of the episodes? But basically since then we haven't heard anything at all. It was like, oh, it's gonna start filming. Oh, it hasn't started filming. Now this other show is filming, and for a long time Andor hadn't had any news. But Alan Tudyk had an interview with Collider, and here's what he said. They're shooting right now. I'm not in it, but if it stays on the air, stories keep getting told, I'll end up there. Okay, so that first comment makes it like, obviously, hey, they're shooting right now is still happening, but I'm not involved. And the way that it's phrased almost sounds like he's not sure if it's going to keep getting more seasons. But this next quote sounds different. He says, I'm going to be in the show. It's just that the story that Tony Gilroy is telling doesn't involve K2SO until later on. I can't be too specific, but I can definitely say that I'm not going to be in the first season. So, kind of interesting that the first quote makes it sound like, oh, he's just not going to be in the show, and then like he's guessing that there's going to be more seasons. But then the second quote, he's being very definitive that yes, there's going to be more seasons of the show, and I will be in the show later on. Now here's where it gets pretty interesting, is that if K2SO doesn't show up for a certain period of time, that then implies that the first season's taking place even earlier in the timeline. Now, what does that mean? That means that Cassian Andor is going to run concurrently with probably season 3 or season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, right when the Star Wars Ghost crew in Star Wars Rebels was really involved with the rebellion in the very beginnings, before Rogue One happens. So it's very possible that in Andor we're gonna start getting a bunch of Rebels connections. It's possible that that's where they will set up your live action Rex, your live action Sabine, maybe even a live action Ahsoka appearance, because she was the fulcrum working for the rebellion at the time, remember? So it's very possible that in this show, which is obviously a prequel to anything happening with The Mandalorian, we're still going to end up getting those Mandalorian connections by having the same live-action Ahsoka and having Tamora Morrison come back and be Rex. And basically you can set up a lot of stuff in this prequel show to Rogue One that will then later show up in the live-action Ahsoka show, which is rumored, of course, to have Sabine and Rex and all those Rebels characters in that show. So there's actually a really interesting way that you can kind of do, before before or even during Star Wars Rebels, the show that, I'd say it's fair to say that the large majority of the mass public, the general audience, has not seen Star Wars Rebels. I think that's pretty fair to say. So you can introduce those people to, like, hey, here are these characters. Here's Ezra and Sabine and Rex and all this stuff that you might not know about, and they're gonna be in this other show that takes place a couple years later. So anyways, I think that's an interesting idea, and it's also, because they're trying to web all of these Disney Plus shows together in a way. I've always considered Andor and Obi-Wan to be more standalone series, whereas the rest of the Mandalorian universe kind of all ties together in a really crisscrossy kind of way. But it definitely feels like you have an opportunity now to kind of set up some of the Ahsoka and Rebels type stuff. And that's something I definitely want to see. Because that's another thing about this Andor show, is that a lot of people, when they announced this originally, a few years back now, a lot of people were saying like, well, what's the point of this show? We know he dies. We know what happens to the Rogue One crew. What do you do in this show? And my main thing that I've always stuck to is that it's the time period. It is right before Rogue One. You have pretty much all of your main characters that can, at this point in time, are able to talk to each other and get to know each other. They're all in play. You can have Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, and you can have all of these people who are still alive at this point in time interact with each other. So obviously you can't have Luke, really, but you can have Leia. Leia was with the Rebellion, so you can have her show up. I don't know if they do that, but they could. So that was always my thing, was that, like, it's the time period is what makes Andor so interesting. And it seems like, especially if this is going to be 2 years or even 3 years before Rogue One happens, you definitely have your Rebels characters in play. We'll see what happens with Andor. It's possible that it's just a spy show and they don't talk about, any of these connections at all, but I kind of doubt it. I feel like that's one of the big things they want to do, is really make sure everything is connected and it's all streamed together, especially if they can get the same actors to play the same characters in 2 different points in time. And Pedro Pascal has actually brought something up about that. He was quoted as saying, "Oh, I know what's going to happen, and there's going to be a bunch of interconnected characters in different time periods," or something along those lines. So basically, he's kind of hinted at the fact that things in these Disney Plus Mandalorian shows might not actually all happen at the same time, but they're all going to be sort of interlaced. So you're going to have some shows that happen before other shows, and then some that maybe take place way after or concurrently at the same time. So yeah, it's going to get really interesting. And yeah, I'm glad K2SO will be in this show eventually. And it's going to be a multi-season show, so I guess we're going to see every moment of Cassian Andor up until he dies now, which is interesting. And it sounds like they have a plan, so that gets me excited, and I'm excited for whatever cameos we might get. Anyways, let me know what you want to see out of this Andor show. Let me know what you think about the idea of, maybe we get our live action Sabine in this show before we ever get it in the Ahsoka show. That could happen. Alright, so let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye!